You're tuned in to the Tithing Hoax podcast, where we offer teachings, commentary, and insights about the false tithing doctrine and the prosperity gospel. In today's show, we're going to find out why a Mormon or former Mormon is suing the church for $5 million. But before we get into that, today's podcast is sponsored by the Tithing Hoax, exposing the lies, myths, and misinterpretations about tithing. Inside this Amazon best-selling book, you'll discover the truth about tithes the church doesn't want you to know. Free yourself from the tithe deception today. Get your copy of the Tithing Hoax on Amazon.com and wherever books are sold. So let's get into today's topic. Why is a former Mormon suing the Mormon church for $5 million? So there is a prominent member or former member of the Mormon church. His name is James Huntsman. His brother happened to serve as the governor of Utah at one point in time. And so this man has been was a long time member of the Mormon church, which is also known as the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which is based in Salt Lake, Utah. So he, over the years, had donated approximately $5 million. And so this Huntsman, James Huntsman, again, he is a member of a very wealthy and prominent family there in Salt Lake City, and he is a longtime member of the church. And so he recently filed a lawsuit against the church claiming fraud, basically the misuse of the tithes, offerings, and donations. And basically, he wants his money back. So in his lawsuit, he alleges, of course, this is all allegation, he alleges that the church has been secretly lining its own pockets by using the funds to develop a multi-billion-dollar commercial real estate and insurance empire. Basically, what he's claiming, that the Mormon church, the Church of Latter-day Saints, that they have taken some portion of the tithes and offerings and used that money to support business ventures. And not too long ago, there was a whistleblower who, I guess, was working at some type of financial management company that was handling the assets for the church, for the I just say LDS, or I may also say Mormon Church, but I think they kind of prefer LDS, Latter-day Saints, for the Latter-day Saints Church. And this person who's described as a whistleblower came out and exposed that the church had $100 billion, billion with the B, $100 billion in assets. And so when this news came out, many members in the LDS church were kind of like shocked. It's like, what? They have all this money that they're just kind of sitting on, and they're like, well, what are they doing with all this money that we have donated to them over the years? And I actually have on the Tithing Hoax website, I have a commentary I did about a member of the LDS church who stopped tithing. When she found out that the church had all this money, had billions of dollars just stockpiled, she decided to stop tithing to the church. But she still tithes, or she still donates, but she does so directly to charitable organizations that she believes in, and that that she believes will do right by the funds that they collect from their donors. So she just gives directly to charitable organizations, and she doesn't tithe anymore to the church. But I think, I don't know as of right now, but at that time, I think she still identified herself as a Mormon, still belonged to the church, but she just wasn't donating her tithes to the Mormon church or the LDS church. So this kind of rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, many of the members of the church the wrong way. And so apparently it really rubbed James Huntsman the wrong way, to the extent, to the point where he felt he had to file a lawsuit against the church. And so the issue, and what I gathered from the article that I read when doing my research, the issue for him is that, look, the church says it's going to use tithes and offerings and the donations for things such as, for charity. They're going to use the funds for charity. They're going to use the funds for missionary work. They're going to use the funds also, of course, for the operating costs of the church. And it was under that understanding that Huntsman gave his money, that you guys are going to use this money for what you say you're going to use it for charitable causes. So when he found out that allegedly the church is using the money and for business investments and for business or commercial activity, he found that unacceptable, because it's like, okay, I've been misled. You're not doing with the money the things you said you were going to do. Now, in all fairness, what I gather, that the church does use money or some portion of the tithes and offerings for charitable activity, but the allegation is that they're doing something extra with the money that church members were not aware of. Okay, and so for case in point, like one of the things that is alleged in Huntsman's lawsuit is that the church used tithes and offerings to like buy or invest in a shopping mall. And also another allegation is that the tithes and donations were used to bail out an insurance agency. So all that is like commercial business related activity that has nothing to do with charity and helping those who are in need, the poor, the downtrodden, so forth and so on. So hence the lawsuit. And of course, the church, the LDS church, says, look, that's not the case, and they're denying the allegations. Now, what is interesting to me, and when I first heard about, or when I first covered the story of the Mormon lady who decided to stop tithing to the church, to the LDS church, I learned about something called the Tithing Settlement. And this is a practice that takes place in the LDS church. And basically, what they do is the members of the church meet with a bishop once a year. And in this meeting, the bishop and the church members have a discussion regarding the tithes, the offerings, and the donations. So basically, the bishop representing the church, they want to know from the church members if they're going to tithe and how much they're going to tithe. And so this is a form of transparency and accountability that the church has put in place to help ensure that the church members are going to do what they say they're going to do regarding giving tithes and offerings and donations to the church. So it's a way the church is holding the church members accountable by making a commitment. So this is what is called the tithing settlement, is what this meeting is, because we want to settle the issue about the tithes in terms of how much you're going to give or how often you're going to give. And no, it's about making a commitment and getting a commitment from the church members. So the tithers basically fall into three categories. You have what they call the full tithe payers, and the tithe is 10% of the income. So a church member comes in. Are you going to be a full tither? Are you going to be that person who pays the 10% to the church? Then the other category is the partial tithe payer. Okay, you're not going to do 10%, but what percentage of your income are you going to tithe to the church or give to the church? And then you have the non-tithe payers. For whatever reason, they're not going to pay tithes to the church. And what is interesting, as far as those who don't pay tithes, the church places restrictions. According to the article I read, they place restrictions on the level of participation a non-tithe payer can engage in with the church. So they are barred from certain religious activities and sacred services as a non-tithe payer. You can come to church, but there's just certain things you cannot participate in. So I found that was interesting. So the church members fall into those three categories. But again, what I'm seeing and one of the issues that I'm pulling out of this story is what I see as a double standard when it comes to financial transparency and accountability. Because it seems like it's kind of one-sided. With the Tithing Settlement meeting, it's about the church holding its members accountable for paying their tithes, and they want the members to be transparent about what they're going to do with their income. Are you going to pay these tithes, and how much you're going to pay? And the church expects the members to do what they say they're going to do during that tithing settlement. You say you're going to be a full tithe payer, guess what? That's what we expect. If you're going to be a partial tithe payer, if you're not going to give 10% of your income, fine, but we are expecting you to deliver on what you say you're going to do. So here's the irony, and here's what I call the double standard. If the allegations that Huntsman is making in his lawsuit are true, that the church has been doing side hustles with the tithes, that, okay, wait a minute. So the church wants the church members to be transparent and want to hold them accountable for their tithes. But where is the accountability and the transparency from the church to its members? Shouldn't the church, in this case we're talking about the LDS Church, Latter-day Saints, shouldn't they be just as transparent about how they're using the people's tithes and offerings? Shouldn't they also be accountable to the church members in regards to how they're using the money that's been donated to them? Because if they were accountable and if they were transparent, it's quite possible that this lawsuit would not even have to have transpired. They possibly could have avoided a lawsuit, because Huntsman's coming from a place like, you guys were deceptive. It's like you're doing a bait and switch. You say you're using the money for charitable activities, but we had to find out from a whistleblower that you got hundreds of billions of dollars just stacked up. And on top of that, you're allegedly bailing out an insurance agency, and you're buying a shopping mall. And so Huntsman's like, that's not what I signed up for. So again, this is an issue of what I see as a double standard regarding transparency and accountability. And so you can make the argument that it's unfortunate that it has to get to a level where a member or a former church member has to actually sue the church Because what? It wasn't transparent, and the church wasn't being transparent, and it wasn't being accountable. And they weren't doing what they said they were going to do with the tithes, offerings, and the donations, allegedly. So what do you think? Do you think there's a double standard with the LDS church? Are they holding the members up to a higher standard in terms of donating their tithes and offerings, versus they're doing what they want to do with the money, and they're not being transparent and accountable to the members? So what do you think about that? Very interesting. So anyway, that's my commentary. I do think there is a double standard there. And churches, not just the LDS church, but other churches as well, need to be more transparent and accountable to its church members regarding tithes and offerings. Because if not, I have a feeling that we're going to see, it's a possibility that we're going to see more situations like this where members or former members are going to demand greater transparency and accountability from the church regarding the tithes and offerings. And if they don't get that, we may in fact see more lawsuits against churches and more members saying, hey, I'm filing a lawsuit for whatever amount of money. And in other words, people are going to say, I want my money back. I want my tithes and my offerings back, because you didn't do what you said you were going to do with the money. So that's another question. Do you think this is the beginning of a trend where churches are going to be facing lawsuits for mismanagement of tithes and offerings? We shall see. But anyway, if you have enjoyed today's Tithing Hoax podcast, please share it on your social media platforms. Let's spread the truth about tithes. Until next time, I'm R. Renee. Thank you for listening, and be blessed.